What if I told you that Mario Kart World isn't actually the first game in the series to present a giant connected world, as it was beaten to the punch by another Mario Kart game more than 20 years earlier? Welcome to Cool Bits, where we spotlight hidden Easter eggs and secret details that you probably missed. And in this episode, we're covering what might be one of the most ambitious sets of environmental details ever created, at least for a kart racer, being the secret connected world of Mario Kart Double Dash. Now, if that sounds a little familiar, it might be because we've actually covered this topic before, over 10 years ago in one of our most popular Cool Bits ever that brought to light an amazing set of details that almost no one had noticed. Yep, we're covering this again. And not just in higher quality from what we could do 10 years ago, but now with more detail and even more secret connections I discovered over the years, most of which I haven't seen documented anywhere else. And that's not all, because we're also going to attempt to map out Double Dash's entire world, as we work our way through every single secret connection. So buckle up, because we're going for a ride. And let's start off with everyone's favorite track, okay, maybe only my favorite, being Baby Park. This adorable Yoshi's Island themed theme park appears to take place in the middle of nowhere, being surrounded by a dense forest on all sides. But if you manage to sneak away from the absolute chaos of the races here, you might just spot something interesting around one of the course's two corners, being a visibly upset mountain in the distance. But that's not just any visibly upset mountain, but the visibly upset mountain from the one and only DK Mountain. Not only can we tell it's the same based on the smoldering red peak and Bart Simpson haircut, but if you really look close, you can even see the rugged pathway that runs down this front side, even if it is nearly impossible to see in full during actual gameplay from the Baby Park side of things. And given the sheer size of that mountain, it only makes sense that it would be visible from a theme park miles away. In fact, that mountain is so big that Baby Park isn't the only track they can see it from. Because if we venture on over to the thick foliage of Dino Dino Jungle, you might catch a glimpse of a few smoldering volcanoes between the trees. One of which looks a little different from the rest, with a fiery red top that's spewing flames. Yeah, there's no mistaking it, that's the one and only visibly upset volcano. Or is it? Because where's his face? Don't worry, Nicolas Cage didn't steal it, because this can simply be explained by the fact that we're looking at its backside, which means from DK Mountain's perspective, Dino Dino Jungle takes place somewhere back here, with Baby Park taking place in front of the mountain. So what I'm getting at is that these three tracks are essentially connected in a straight line through this region, which if we were to map it out, would look something like this. And now that we know these three tracks are connected, we can see other similarities that tie them together too, such as how all three tracks appear to be surrounded by very similar looking mountains or volcanoes, along with dense foliage. And all of this really helps to cement this entire region's identity as a densely forested area. So let's call it the forest region. I know, I'm pretty clever. But as for why they decided to build a theme park here of all places? Well, who knows? But then again, Disney World is literally built in a swamp, so it actually kinda makes sense. But hey, at least it's within driving distance of that volcano, and I just so happen to have the vehicle for the occasion. This is the C7Max chair. And no, it's not actually a go-kart, but it is the next best thing, being the most comfortable chair I've used in my entire life, for both work and gaming. And I'm not just saying that, I've had it for weeks now, as I've used it in every single video on this channel over the past month and a half. And it's been a total game changer for both me and my back. Now look, the chair I was using before wasn't the worst thing ever. But as one who often sits at my desk for 8 to 12 hours a day, I needed something better. So when Flexispot reached out about the C7Max, I leapt at the opportunity. And this is by far the most ergonomic and comfortable chair that I've ever owned. Let me show you why. It has amazing lumbar support, a fully adjustable backrest, a 3D adjustable headrest to just about any position, thick memory foam for your little tush's comfort, and check this out. 5D armrests that can be adjusted to almost any position imaginable. I'm not joking when I say these are literally the best armrests I've ever used anywhere. Which is especially great for someone like me who sits in all kinds of weird positions. I am literally sitting on my legs as we speak. See? There's a footrest it can pull out so it can lean back and relax when it's game time too. I honestly can't recommend this chair enough, especially as it comes with a 30-day risk-free guarantee, along with a 10-year warranty that will replace any damaged parts. And perhaps the best part of all is you can use my code in the description to get the best price possible. But hey, no worries if you're on a limited budget too, as you may want to check out the Flexispot C5 chair, which is more affordable and still has great build quality and adjustable basic functions. So let me end this segment by saying this. Making this entire video would have been far less comfortable without the C7Max literally having my back. So again, to find out more and get that discount, click my link in the description below. Otherwise, let's get back to our Double Dash World Tour. And that starts with Peach Beach, the first course of our next region. But uniquely, this one is set in an existing Mario territory, being of course Isle Delfino from Super Mario Sunshine. as we can clearly tell based on the architecture and the giant Pianta statue wearing a shine. And interestingly enough, Super Mario Sunshine is almost certainly what inspired the exact topic we're discussing right now, as the entirety of that game took place in a single location, where you could see major landmarks from just about any other location on the island. Now, as you probably remember, Isle Delfino is a tropical paradise, making it an attractive vacation destination for princesses and plumbers alike. It even had a whole travel commercial and everything. And that idea is only reinforced even further with Peach Beach. And not just because of the Peach Beach tour buses that go around Mushroom Bridge and Mushroom City, but more because there are two cruise ships just hanging around. The first being the Sunshine docked in the harbor, and the second being none other than Daisy Cruiser. Yes, as in the same Daisy Cruiser that doubles as an entire racetrack itself. Only in that case it takes place out in the open ocean, with no land in sight and the ship leaving a clear wake in its path. Which, by the way, is kind of an amazing detail considering it's almost impossible to see this during actual gameplay. Anyways, it seems to be on its way to its next destination, which is very likely Yoshi's Circuit, as the Daisy Cruiser can be found in the background of that course too. And as it turns out, it didn't come alone, because you guessed it, the Sunshine came along for the trip too, with it being found on the opposite side of the island. So with these three tracks now clearly linked, there are some other similarities that tie them all together too. For one, they're all obviously ocean adjacent, either by being an oceanic island or the cruise ship that travels between them. But then there's the fact that these three courses may represent one of the only times in Mario Kart history that there's been any sense of continuity between tracks. As it suggests that Daisy Cruiser starts off in Peach Beach, in the Mushroom Cup, and it appears it may have stocked up on supplies while it was there, as the shipping containers that can be found alongside the dock can then later be found in the cargo hold of the Daisy Cruiser in the Flower Cup, all before it reaches its final destination being Yoshi's Circuit in the Star Cup. So that's pretty neat. Now, given the mobile nature of the Daisy Cruiser itself, it's impossible to definitively map out how these three tracks are located in relation to each other. But how about we take a stab at it anyway? Because if we assume the Daisy Cruiser traveled in a straight line across all three tracks, that could mean that they're laid out something like this, only with an indeterminate amount of ocean between the three. So let's go ahead and call this the Oceanic region. And with that wrapped up, it's time to move on to the final and densest region by far. And that starts with Mushroom Bridge, which actually connects to two other tracks. First up, if you look past the fog around the first corner, you might just spot the distant spires of Peach's castle. You know, the same one that you race around in Mario Circuit? Even from way back here, you can make out the stars perched on each corner, along with a flag on top. Although, the entryway is nowhere in sight, so we must be looking at the back and one of the sides of the castle. But which ones exactly, as they all look the same? Well, if we assume the flag's position is consistent in both courses, we can determine that this side is the true back, meaning the entrance is on the opposite side. Which also means that, from Mario Circuit's perspective, Mushroom Bridge takes place somewhere back here, and that would look something like this on the map. Now here's where it gets interesting, because originally this seemed to be a one-way connection, as there didn't appear to be anything in Mario Circuit that hinted at Mushroom Bridge, except for one small detail I noticed recently. This odd group of mushrooms, which are the only ones like this on the entire track, and perhaps not coincidentally, the only details on this map that exist beyond the course's boundaries. And that's when I realized something. Now that we know that Mushroom Bridge takes place behind Peach's castle, these mushrooms are positioned exactly along the path of where we now expect Mushroom Bridge to be, which is kind of a perfect transition into the mushroom-shaped homes that dominate the bridge area. In any case, Mario Circuit isn't the only track visible from Mushroom Bridge, because if you look across the water from the bridge, you'll spot a distant city, which includes things like mushroom-capped skyscrapers, as in the exact same ones found in the Mushroom City racetrack. And this one's actually a concrete two-way connection, because if you look across the water from the other direction, as in when exiting Mushroom City's downtown area, you'll spot the unmistakable arches of Mushroom Bridge. And in case there's any doubt, the amount of arches and holes between them matches up perfectly, right down to the fountain-like design within them. So let's go ahead and add Mushroom City to our map right here. And that makes this pair of courses rather unique in that they're the only two tracks to be definitively visible from each other. Or at least that's what I would have said if it weren't for another new discovery I made recently, but we'll get back to that in a few moments. Because, as it turns out, Mushroom City isn't visible from just one other racetrack, but two more. The first being Wario Coliseum, which I actually missed in our original video as it's nearly impossible to catch on original GameCube hardware, both due to the twisty track layout and the thick fog. But there are actually a handful of instances where you may just spot a distant city through the Coliseum archways. And sure enough, it has the exact same trademark mushroom-capped skyscrapers as Mushroom City. You can even see a road leading up to it too, but it does appear to be pretty far away. which would mean that from Mushroom Bridge's perspective, Wario Coliseum would have to be somewhere pretty far behind the city, which could look something like this on the map. Now as for the other track that Mushroom City can be seen from, well, it's none other than Rainbow Road. Yep, even though it's set high in the sky, if you pull a donkey,
check! I'm looking down!
You'll spot the same mushroom-capped skyscrapers of Mushroom City, as well as the buildings with all those star-shaped windows. So who would have guessed that Rainbow Road is lurking above another track the entire time? Well, to that point, what if I told you there was still one more detail that I haven't shared yet, as I discovered it long after my original video? Because even though you can't directly see Rainbow Road from Mushroom City, its presence is still secretly hinted at. As if we take a close look at Mushroom City's night sky, we can see some pretty colorful celestial objects, being these red, yellow, and blue spheres hiding among the stars, which, as it turns out, are the exact same ones that can be found in the background of Rainbow Road itself, again being far above Mushroom City. And let me be clear, this isn't just a case of Nintendo reusing a skybox, as those colorful objects aren't even part of Rainbow Road's skybox, but are instead their own independent objects. And although the ones in Mushroom City are part of its skybox, it's the only track in the entire game to feature it, meaning, without a doubt, this is an intentional reference. So pretty cool, huh? Rainbow Road is actually teased before you even unlock the track itself. So how about we finally add Rainbow Road to our map? So with that final connection, it kinda makes Mushroom City the true hub of this game, being visible from a grand total of 3 other racetracks, while itself providing a clearer view of Mushroom Bridge, and then teasing the presence of the majestic Rainbow Road far above, which I guess would make Mushroom City the certified heart of Double Dash. Huh, maybe that's why hearts can secretly be found all over this track. So given the more developed nature of these 5 racetracks all being city adjacent, how about we call this the urban region? And with that, our maps are finally complete, as we've now connected 11 racetracks across 3 different regions, being forest, oceanic, and urban. So I guess you can call me the Double Dash cartographer. Now, unfortunately, these regions have no direct connections to each other, unless you count the Yoshi copter that flies between Baby Park and Yoshi Circuit. So we could only speculate how these 3 regions align with each other. In any case, that does leave us with 5 tracks left without any direct connections to any other, being Luigi Circuit, Dry Dry Desert, Waluigi Stadium, Sherbet Land, and Bowser's Castle. But oddly enough, it kinda makes sense that we wouldn't know exactly where those 5 tracks take place. After all, Dry Dry Desert and Sherbet Land both clearly take place in entirely different biomes, and it's also unlikely anyone in the Mushroom Kingdom would build anything near Bowser's Castle, except at Super Nintendo World, I suppose. Even Luigi's Circuit makes some kind of weird sense, considering the mansion that can be found alongside the racetrack, as that's not just any mansion, but the one that Luigi earned in the best ending of Luigi's Mansion, which replaced the old and busted one he'd been exploring for most of the game. So that implies that Luigi redeveloped the entire creepy surroundings to be more pleasant, and well, more commercial too. But since we know that that mansion was originally in the middle of nowhere,
alright, that is pretty much nowhere,
it kinda makes sense that this racetrack would still be too. Finally, that leaves only Waluigi Stadium left. But since the stadium walls tower over the racetrack here, we actually can't know for sure whether it's placed near another track or not. So in the end, Double Dash offered a taste of what Mario Kart wouldn't fully realize until over 20 years later, which in a way makes Double Dash's implementation almost more impressive. Because Nintendo didn't need to do this. They didn't have to connect most of the stages in this weird way, as it's not actually intrinsic to the gameplay. Which basically makes this one of the coolest set of Easter eggs I've ever discovered, and I have to say, those are some pretty cool bits. But before we wrap it up, I found some other pretty odd things about Double Dash while making this video. Let's call them weird bits. And I've actually made a whole video about these weird bits exclusive to our patrons and YouTube members. So please consider supporting me if you'd like to check it out. Trust me when I say that's some pretty unusual stuff that you've likely never seen before. And speaking of backers, thanks so much to all of our lovely supporters that are on screen right now. I couldn't be making cool videos like this without all of you. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to our channel to make sure you don't miss any future cool bits. And with that, we'll catch you later. Bye everyone!